Okay, so while everyone's arriving back, I'm just going to talk to our online friends and just say welcome back to everyone who's joining us online tonight. Sorry I'm a few minutes late, so my name's Akasha Mitra. If you've been joining the online classes, you'll have seen I've been teaching some of the online evenings as well. And I just want to say quickly, so Jayaka is going to teach the second half of the class, and I'll hand over to him in a moment. But just before he does that, I just want to say a couple of things. One is that we're running, myself and Surya Gupta are running a course which is going to be online. So if you're joining us online this evening and you want to do a course online on the Metta Bhavana practice, on the Metta Bhavana meditation, we're going to be running a course from next Thursday. And it's going to be 6 Thursdays from next Thursday evening. So that is the 9th of September to the 14th of October from 7 till 9 in the evening. And on that course, we're going to be doing an in-depth exploration of the Metta Bhavana practice. So do think about signing up for that. And the other thing as well is just to encourage you to support us or continue to support us financially. So it does take resources and people to run our online sessions and to keep doing these hybrid classes. So it'd be very, very nice if you can keep on donating to us, particularly those of you that are joining us online. So you could do that by setting up a monthly donation to us, or you could just give as and when you come to classes. So you could think about, say, for example, giving £10 for the class this evening. Do think about continuing to give online. Okay, great. So welcome back to all of you here as well. And I'm going to hand you over now to Jayaka. So I just want to briefly introduce Jayaka actually before Jayaka comes up. So I've known Jayaka for a long time, and I just think it's really lovely that he's coming to teach at this class. So he's not a regular teacher at this evening. But he's coming in to do the second half of the class this evening. And I was very pleased to hear that Jayaka's coming. So he's been associated with the London Buddhist Centre for a very long time. How long is it?
22 years.
22 years, yeah. I was part of a regular study group that Jayaka used to lead about 10 years ago, I think, wasn't it? And I had the pleasure and privilege of being in that study group every week for, I think it was about 4 years. And Jayaka is a very, very wise man, and he's very, very dedicated to the London Buddhist Centre as well. He's dedicated a lot of his life to looking after the building, for one thing, and also to just being part of the community here as well. He's very, very wise, and he's very, very generous as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he's got to say. And it's a pleasure to really welcome Jayaka.
Yeah, thanks very much, Akasha Mitra. Thanks for the welcome, and hello to everybody, and hello to everybody online. Good to see you here. So, just collect my notes. So I'm going to start with a verse. It's not the verse that we're looking at this evening, but it captures the spirit of the whole mind training tradition, because that's what we're talking about this evening. And then I'll say a bit about that, and then we'll go on to look at the verse. And then probably at the end of when I speak, Kusasara's going to come up, and we're going to be able to take some questions and maybe have a bit of a discussion. We'll see how time goes, though. So these days I have to put these on. So, he or she who desires shelter quickly for themselves or for all others should use this sacred mystery, the exchanging of oneself for others. So I'll say that again. He or she who desires shelter quickly for themselves or for all others should use this sacred mystery, the exchanging of oneself for others. So that particular verse comes from a text from around about the 8th century, from the Bodhichitta, which happens to be on the podium here. I didn't put it there, which is hopefully it's auspicious. I don't know. From an 8th century teacher called Shantideva, who lived in northern India, a place called Nalanda, which I visited, which you can visit. And he wrote a very, very long kind of, well, some people call it a poem. It is in kind of in verses, and I think there's over 100 verses, and these verses are very pithy. And when I started to come across the mind training tradition, the later tradition, around about the 10th or 11th century, the Tibetan, these come out of the Tibetan tradition, they just really reminded me of this early tradition. And I think they very much come from Shantideva. Shantideva, really recommend reading Shantideva because you have these very kind of short verses. And they're right to the point. They're not psychological. They just say, do this, do that. If you want this, do this. And I really like that because I like things that don't go around the houses too much. I like to get to sort of the business end of what we need to do. So that's an important verse there, very, very important for me as well, personally. And I think, as I say, this underpins this whole tradition, this mind training tradition. So mind training, the Tibetan word is lojong. Yeah, and I think that started to sort of form around about the 10th or 11th century. But training goes back way early, around the time of the Buddha. So it's very traditional to ask to be trained. So when people would be very, very impressed by the Buddha, they would go to the Buddha and they would say, please take me as your disciple, please be my teacher. And the Buddha would say, okay, well, we need to give you some training. We need to give you some precepts. So he would usually enter people into the Sangha by giving them what we call the lay precepts. We don't have lay precepts in the Triratna, but they're the usual standard 5 training precepts. And if your teacher would know you, you may get another precept. I know in the Triratna tradition, if you're a preceptor and you're ordaining someone, if you know them very well, you may think, oh, they may need an extra precept that relates to them in particular. So yeah, training is important in the Buddhist tradition and regular daily training. So yes, we do need to train our mind because you may think that you're completely creative and independent and that you're a free thinker, but probably you might not be because we've all been conditioned, our minds have all been trained in particular ways. But we can continue that training, if you see what I mean, in a very skillful way, so that we can all be trained. So yeah, it's not good enough really to just read Buddhism from books. We need to read Buddhist books and we need to take on Buddhism in that way, but we need to somehow live it, and then we start to understand, and that's how we train, by living out the Buddhist teachings. And one of the purposes of mind training, of lojong, is to bring about the arising of the Bodhichitta. Now, Bodhichitta is a concept basically. It's a bit abstract, a bit of an abstract concept, and it was coined by the Mahayanists. And you could say the Bodhichitta is something that you can experience personally, or you can experience in a community, or you can experience other people. It's almost like a force coming through them, yeah. Or even an atmosphere. You may experience when you come to the centre a particular kind of atmosphere, and we could say that's something to do with the Bodhichitta. So yeah, the Mahayanists who coined they coined this phrase, this particular concept. And if we just go back to the early tradition again, to the time of the Buddha, so you've got what we call the Hinayanists. They were around at the time of the Buddha, and the Buddha died. Yeah, we all know the Buddha died, and then there was this big discussion about how the Dharma should be taught, how Buddhism should be taught. So there were the Hinayanists who said, "Oh no, it's the letter." It's all the rules that the Buddha taught, and that they wanted to communicate in that way. The rules and so on. And there are another group of people, who became the Mahayanists, and they were more concerned about the spirit of the teaching. They were more concerned that the Buddha was absent, and that when they experienced the Buddha around, they just experienced his kindness and his desire for all beings to be free from suffering. Yeah, so this is where apparently the origins are of the Mahayana, and they coined this Bodhichitta, and it's basically the desire for all beings to be free from suffering. That's kind of where it comes from. So Bodhichitta, Bodhi basically means awake, and chitta means heart. So it's to do with the heart, yeah. And it basically is another word for enlightenment, or awakening. And it's this desire for everybody to kind of to be awake, to be enlightened. So to help us understand this training, the Lojong masters, they talked about bodhicitta in two ways. So it has two emphases, two sides to the same coin. And they're equally important. One can sound more important than the other. It does to me, but actually it's not. They're equally important to each other. So firstly, there's relative bodhicitta. Now, relative bodhicitta is associated with compassion. Yeah, relative bodhicitta. And this is mainly training in the externals. So what I mean by this is when we train, it's what we do in the world, how we relate to other people. So these are things like being ethical. So we train in the 5 precepts or the 10 precepts if we're an order member. And ethics, there's not just the privacy of the sort of the ethical moment in one's mind. Ethics has got a lot to do with other people. It's got a lot to do with how we relate to people, how we are, how we understand other people. So this is something that we can practice to bring about this relative bodhicitta, this compassion. Yeah. And then there's generosity. Practicing generosity really is a kind of an extension of ethics, an extension of being skillful. So we try to share what we have. We try to share our resources. That may be food or money or time, or just having a generous kind of attitude. So we try to practice in generosity. And then there's patience. We try to be patient with ourselves. We try to be patient with life. Life doesn't go our way. And these days, we expect with a click of a mouse for things to appear the next day. But we really do need to practice patience because life isn't easy. And also in patience, we need to practice forgiveness, be able to forgive, let go of revenge, all those sorts of things. We need to be forgiven too sometimes. Well, I know I need to be forgiven too sometimes because maybe I could be a bit harsh or something. So there's patience. And then there's engagement of our energy. This is often, we talk about energy in the pursuit of the good. So in a way, we can see, I like to see myself as, well, just a big bundle of energy, and what am I going to do with it? I need to do something with my energy. So I try to direct it towards the Dharma. I try to direct it towards propagating the Dharma, cultivating the conditions for the Dharma to take root, particularly in London or in Western culture. So there's some things that we can do there in terms of developing this relative bodhicitta, which I said is mainly connected with compassion, the aspect of compassion. And then there's what we call absolute bodhicitta. This is the other side, yeah. And this is more to do with really understanding the Dharma in its depths, yeah. So much so that our behaviour becomes more and more difficult to contradict it. So we just become more and more aligned to what we understand, and that's expressed in the kind of way that we are. And as this happens, in a way, you can't sort of deny the Buddha's vision, even though there's all sorts of resistance to practicing the Dharma. You can't deny the Buddha's truth. And the absolute bodhicitta is related to wisdom. Yeah, it's related to clear seeing. I really like this metaphor of seeing clearly. Yeah, this is to do with wisdom, because we all know that metaphor when we can't see things clearly, literally, and when the mist clears, we can see things, and that's the metaphor of the Buddha's wisdom, seeing things clearly. So they're the two aspects of bodhicitta there, which underpins these Lojong verses. I'm going to get onto the verse soon, the verse that we're supposed to be exploring tonight. But all this includes meditation as well. So as I said, compassion and wisdom, that's what bodhicitta is. Enlightenment, compassion and wisdom. Yeah, same thing. Although I think compassion can be a little bit misleading. I prefer being able to respond, responsiveness. Compassion can sometimes be something to do with being kind of really emotional or sentimental or something. But compassion is being able to respond and respond appropriately to situations. So you kind of know when you can help and when you can't help. And if you can't help, you kind of let go. If you sort of mean, you still feel for a situation. You really like to be able to help, but if you can't, you can just let go. Or if you can help, you kind of step in. This is what compassion is like. You really know where you can apply your energy. And instead of wisdom, which I think can sound a bit kind of aloof or a bit kind of up there, where is it? I prefer kind of clarity. So responsiveness and clarity. I prefer those two. And this clarity is also to do with a bit what Kusala was saying about sort of understanding the human predicament, the predicament that we're all in. That we have our lives. Our lives are relatively short. We have a short go at this life, and what do we do with it? What do we actually do with our life? What is life for? We have, a certain amount of pleasure, a certain amount of pain, and what do we do? Life's a bit of a mystery, and this clarity is getting to understand more what life really is, and what we can actually do with our life, instead of just kind of being hedonistic and waiting till the end. That's how I used to be anyway. So both of these sides of the bodhicitta need to be cultivated, and we don't want to be cultivating one side more than the other. Yeah, so we need a balance. So let's get on to the verse. Let's actually look at the verse that we're going to be looking at this evening. I'm going to read through all the verses actually until we come to the 7th one, which I'll stop, and that's what we're going to look at a bit more fully. So 8 verses of mind training by Geshe Langre Tangpa. So may I always cherish all beings with the resolve to accomplish for them the highest good that is more precious than any wish-fulfilling gem. Whenever I am in the company of others, may I regard myself as inferior to all, and from the depths of my heart cherish others as supreme. In all my actions may I watch my mind, and as soon as disturbing emotions arise, may I forcefully stop them at once, since they hurt both me and others. When I see ill-natured people overwhelmed by wrong deeds and pain, may I cherish them as something rare, as though I had found a treasure trove. When someone out of envy does me wrong, by insulting me and the like, may I accept defeat and offer victory to them. Even if someone whom I have helped and whom I have placed my hopes does great wrong by harming me, May I see them as an excellent spiritual friend. And this is the verse we're going to look at in a moment. In brief, directly or indirectly, may I give all help and joy to my mothers, and may I take all their harm and pain secretly upon myself. So I'll just repeat that one. In brief, directly or indirectly, may I give all help and joy to my mothers, and may I take all their harm and pain secretly upon myself. So as Kusala Sara's saying there, these verses, they just turn everything upside down. All your normal ways of functioning, it all gets thrown out. It all gets kind of reversed. That's what I really love about these. It's so refreshing. I really like this. So we'll take it line by line. So in brief is the first line. So I think here, probably not too much to dig out, but I think it's. I think it just means the pith. Yeah, the pith. Probably the pith of these verses actually. So everything's seems to be boiled down to this verse, and I think it is probably one of the more important verses in this list. And I think if you're going to, if you're interested in these mind training verses, it is good to know one or two of the verses. I think you could just learn one. It's a bit like just learning one verse of the Dhammapada can just give you access to the Buddha's teaching. And I think a verse like this can give you access, to the Buddha's teaching. So if you want to, just learn one of these. I think this is a good one to learn. So the pith, yeah. And then it says directly or indirectly. So not reflected on this before, but I think that it may be here, it may mean we are trying to develop this bodhicitta, and you want to do it directly with people. You want to do it directly to the people that you live with, that you work with, that you see. So as I said earlier, those things that we do in relationship to the relative bodhicitta, being ethical, being generous, this is what we need to do directly in relationship to the people that we know, so that we definitely get a practice of this kind of in our life. And I suspect that indirectly may mean do it in meditation as well. So you can kind of do this anywhere. And this verse does relate to meditation, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, particular meditation. So inside and outside of meditation, we need to train, and we need to train the imagination. So the imagination is this tremendous resource that we have, and we need to really wake up to this resource, that we're just not just kind of walking around with this cognitive mind that can work out problems. The imagination really gives us access to the depths, and it can be strengthened. It's just like the cognitive muscle. The imaginative muscle can be strengthened, and we do that through metta bhavana, and we do that by sort of bearing people in mind. And when we bring people to mind in the metta bhavana, or in this particular meditation I'm going to say in a minute, we really try to feel our way into what it feels like for them. We try to. You mentioned a shopkeeper. You know, what's it like when you go in to see that shopkeeper that you put in your neutral stage in your meditation? What's it like for him or her standing behind the counter, serving people, you know, every day, maybe year after year? What do they experience? Have they got a family? Are they supporting their family, or are they really lonely? Maybe they've got a family and they're lonely, but often people are lonely. What's it like for them? How can we be curious about them? How, in a way, the imagination gets us out of ourselves, which is where we need to go in relationship to the Dharma, is how we can get outside of ourselves and try to bear other people in mind. Developing the imagination. And we when we do this, we get beyond our preferences, don't we? In the metta bhavana, we we've got all sorts of preferences, and the metta bhavana challenges those preferences. There's a friend, we've probably got a preference for being around them. As a neutral person, maybe I'm not too bothered, about them, I'm too concerned, perhaps. And the difficult person, maybe not, maybe I don't want to be. So there's all sorts of preferences. All those preferences get challenged, and that's really, really good. And we can do that in the privacy of our imagination. So we can kind of process our responses in safety without kind of upsetting other people. So that's really important. So we're going to move on to the next line now. So may I give all help and joy to my mothers. So this is a reference to what's called Tong Leng meditation. We often, in the Triratna Buddhist order, we call it the Bodhichitta practice. But in Tibetan Buddhism, they call it Tong Leng practice. Any people heard of Tong Leng? Yeah? So basically, Tong Leng translates as receiving and sending. Receiving and sending. So may I give all help and joy to my mothers. So basically, how do we wish all beings well? I mean, this is what they use. They use this, this reflection of the fact that if we've all been reborn again and again, and it's not really, it's punabhava, it's rebecoming, is the way that we usually talk about. If we've become again and again through lifetime and lifetime after lifetime, then, and the Mahayanists, they have this incredible kind of imagination of tremendous amounts of time where you've been reborn thousands and thousands and thousands of times. Well, everybody could possibly be your mother. Or your father. Really, we're talking about the person that's loved you and the person that's cared for you, but they say mother in here. So we try to imagine all beings as our mother, and we're trying to generate this love that I'm sure we've been the focus of love. We don't survive without love. When we're children, when we're babies, the first thing we do apparently is we want to suckle. We're attuned to love. We're attuned to be nurtured, and this is what we want, and this is what we need. So we kind of tune back into that love that we received when we were children, whoever we received it from. I know sometimes relationships can be complicated in our families, but I'm pretty sure you're all here because people have loved you. So whatever you tell yourself about your life, I'm sure there's people that love you and love you now and have loved you. So we try to tune into this love, and we try to develop it for all beings. But then what we do is we bring in another kind of reflection in this Tong Leng practice. We imagine all the love and the joy. We send them love and joy in the form of light, in the form of moonlight. And that leaves the body on the out-breath. Yeah? So it's almost like we breathe out white light and we send it to these people. Yeah, we send it to all our mothers. And we do it, so we say, the phrase that we say is we let it ride the breath. And this keeps us in contact with our body. This means that we stay embodied and in our body. And if we're more embodied during meditation, we're more likely to be able to process the emotions that go on. So often we go up in our head, we're off, we're not really aware of the body, we're holding all these emotions in our body. So if we use the breath in conjunction with this approach, we're more likely to stay in contact with the body, in contact with our emotions, and we can process things. So that's sending joy and love, and we send good karma, I mean, according to tradition, you can't really send good karma, but don't worry about that. We send it anyway. This is a method. It's not a metaphysical statement. Yeah, we just send it. And particularly, you send them the joy that, of being in contact with the Dharma. This is the supreme joy. That if people are in contact with the Dharma, they've got a real chance at making something of their life, and that is the real joy that we're sending. But you can imagine sending them all the help that they need. Imagine them having all the things that they want, money. You can imagine giving them flowers or offerings or whatever's kind of gets you going. Yeah. So that's sending. So we're training in metta. This is metta, basically. We're training in metta. We're training in having this approach, this metta kind of attitude. So we send that in the form of white light, of moonlight. And then, well, during this meditation, it's also traditional to imagine at your heart the Buddha. So you'll have your Buddha in the chest, or some other symbol of the Buddha, and that is the source of the white light. That you're not the source of the white light. The Buddha is, and the white light just comes through you. You're a conduit for this white light. And the white light is the Bodhichitta. It comes through. So the next line is. And this is probably a bit more challenging. May I take all their harm and pain. May I take all their harm and pain. That's a big ask. So this is all their physical pain, all their emotional pain, all their existential pain, everything, every sort of pain that you can think of. And you breathe that in. You breathe that in on the in-breath. And remember again that we can't really take that on. We'd be completely overwhelmed if we did that. So again, it just goes to the Buddha. Let the Buddha sort of breathe. So you breathe in, it goes into your heart. And the Buddha purifies all the pain that people experience. So we would, so you'd breathe in the pain on the in-breath, and on the out-breath you'd send back white light. You'd breathe in the pain and you'd send out white light. Yeah. So what's likely to happen is when you bring to mind people's suffering, is you're more likely to resist. You might get anxious. You might get angry. There's all sorts of strange kind of responses that we can have towards people suffering. You know, we can blame them. It's very strange, that, isn't it? I've done that. It's very, very kind of odd. So whatever arises, you breathe that in. You always bring the same attitude to what's arising. Everything that arises, you can bring onto the path. This is one central to mind training. So there aren't any situations that you can get caught out, if you see what I mean, that you can't practice in. That's what's really wonderful about these verses. So whenever we encounter adversity, we can transform that. And this, sometimes we talk about that we turn adversity into the path of awakening. So we turn adversity into bodhicitta. And this really helps us keep the initiative in our life. So anything that happens, we can recollect this kind of thing, and we can just keep the initiative. We really need to keep the initiative with our lives, because there'll be a lot of things probably that's going to happen that's going to throw us. Yeah. So that's important. So the meditation sequence, roughly speaking, is that you contact your inspiration. First of all, you contact your inspiration in the form of the Buddha, or whatever, or similar image, similar Buddhist image, and then you start the sequence with yourself. So you recollect, you may be in pain now, you may be in emotional pain now or physical pain, and you just imagine yourself breathing that in, and then you breathe out light, and you're kind of pacifying that pain towards yourself. And then you do that for somebody else, and then you bring someone else in, maybe think of somebody that's suffering, maybe they've broken their leg, or their relationship's broken down, or they're bereaved, and you really try to imagine, what's it like for them right now? It must feel really difficult for them, and you just really try to take that in, and you process it. As I say, you feel that in your body, and you breathe out white light, and you process that. And what this does, when we're turning towards suffering, and what happens is we start to reverse our normal habitual patterns here. So usually when we experience suffering, we turn away. We don't want to deal with it. We close down. We have all sorts of strategies to deal with suffering, and existential suffering, physical suffering. We may drink or watch too much internet or distract ourselves in all kinds of ways. But what we're doing is, no, we're engaging with the suffering, and we try to process it. So that reverses our tendency towards aversion, and it develops sensitivity. And if we're more sensitive, then we can be compassionate. Does that make sense? We can be responsive to people. So that's what happens when we start to turn towards suffering. And so there's aversion that we usually get stuck on, that we usually run away from. And then there's craving. So craving usually arises in relationship to pleasure. So in this meditation, we're trying to experience pleasure and send it towards other beings. And usually, that would turn to craving, and we would grasp after the pleasure, so we would try and hold on to it and fix it. But because we're sending it to other people, we're sort of reversing that, if you see what I mean. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we just reverse those tendencies towards craving and aversion, which is another central theme of Buddhism, is reversing those habits. So this is what can happen in this practice. Okay. So you contacted your inspiration. You've started with yourself. You've moved on to some other people. You can do as many stages as you like. You don't have to, you're not limited by 2 or 3 stages, or maybe a morning where you just do yourself, or you just do a friend, or you do a group of people. Maybe there's a group of people that are suffering. Are they suffering a particular way? You can do it in all sorts of ways. And this is the beauty of this is meditation, that you can adapt it. And then at the end of the meditation, you bring in a reflection, an important reflection. And this is a bit strange because it can sound like it's completely at odds to what you've just done. You try to bring in a reflection that all of everybody's pleasure and pain is just kind of dreamlike. And it's kind of... where is it now? Where's it all gone? Where have all those experiences gone? Where's all my life gone? Where's all my pleasure and pain gone? It doesn't feel like it's with me now, so where is it? And it's all very kind of dreamlike. So we bring this dreamlike reflection in. It's a kind of a wisdom reflection, and it's a metaphor. It's when you're having one of those anxiety dreams and you're in it and you just think, oh God, I'm really worried, and and you really get carried away in the dream, and it's totally believable and it's completely your world, and you wake up and you go, oh, I was dreaming, and it all felt so real. So this is the reflection that you're also trying to bring in to all these experiences that you've all just really tried to connect to. Does that make sense? Yeah? So this is the wisdom. this is the wisdom aspect, and this stops us getting too involved in all the difficulties and the ups and downs of life. But equally, we need to be really involved. So in that way, we develop responsiveness, we develop compassion, and we develop clarity and wisdom. So this is the reflection that we bring in at the end there. So sometimes people say, well, why don't you teach this practice at the centre? I didn't get introduced to this practice till I was in the order. And I think you really need a very, very strong context for this sort of meditation. You definitely need a strong Sangha context. And you definitely need a strong kind of grounding in the Brahma Viharas. So the Brahma Viharas are a set of meditations. They're basically metta coming into contact with suffering, metta coming in contact with joy, and metta coming in contact with everybody else's pleasure and pain, almost like that wisdom reflection we heard at the end. So I'd recommend, if you get the opportunity, that you do a Brahma Viharas retreat if you want to try and sort of explore this area. But metta really is the key to this verse, this Tong Leng practice. So then the final line in this verse is that we take all this secretly upon ourselves. So I guess this means that we don't shout from the rooftops that this is kind of what we're doing. And I think it might be a reference to, often we can have mixed motivations when we're practicing what we call the spiritual life. Maybe we want to appear kind or appear spiritual or whatever it is, or we want people to like us, we want approval. And we can come into relationship with a spiritual community and we can try and sort of, we enjoy it and we like it, we want people to like us, but our motivations are a little bit skewed, yeah? And this is all completely normal. We've all got mixed motivations. So it's worth checking what our motivations are, because it brings about clarity and it kind of purifies our motivation as we move along the path. But certainly, yeah, it's not something that we shout from the rooftops when we're kind of walking around the streets or in the spiritual community. So I'll just finish with some general points. I started off with that verse, didn't I? That Shantideva verse. Am I going to be able to find it? Yes, that's good. He or she who desires shelter quickly for themselves and for others should use this sacred mystery, the exchanging of oneself for others. So in a way you can kind of see that verse is kind of turning everything upside down again, what these verses do. So instead of you just experiencing your own aversion, you try to experience other people's aversion, or you don't hold on to your joy, you send people joy. So we are literally trying to exchange ourselves for other, and this kind of starts to break down this sense of the barrier, what Buddhism often talks about, this barrier between self and other. Yeah, like we experience ourselves as a separate consciousness, but Buddhism says it's not really like that. Consciousness is kind of all kind of joined up, and that sense of separateness causes us to suffer. That means that we act in ways that cause us to suffer. We act as if we're separate, and we're not, and that causes pain and kind of aggravation. So that's why I wanted to mention this verse early on. And in the Bodhichitta, in the same verse, the Shantideva talks about the equality of self and other and the exchange of self and other. So the equality of self and other is just this reflection of, oh, everybody's just like me, and we've all got the same similar kind of troubles. And then there's this exchange that happens during the practice. So I think that's probably all I've got to say really about that particular verse. So should we take some questions or any observations? Do you want to come up, Kustasara? Yeah. Do you need a mat or to put your chair on? Or is that all right?
I'll just sit very lightly.
Enough space.
Yes, yeah.
We're going to finish with a mantra, aren't we? Are we going to do that?
Yeah, we can. Yeah. We just work out the programme while we're sitting here in front of you.
I think we did discuss that earlier, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure so we can keep an eye on time.
Yeah. So any questions online as well about the evening, about what
Online.
Jayaka's said? You might.
All those people out there.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the last reflection on the dreamlike quality of is there a danger that you could detach a bit from your experience, and by doing that, is there anything you would recommend to just stay in contact?
Well, I do the relative bodhicitta practices, so you have to stay in contact with people, and you have to, there is a truth about all their suffering. Do you see what I mean? That is real for them, and they experience that, and that's what we always relate to that, regardless of what sort of any clarity that we have on whether it really exists or not. That doesn't matter really for them. Of course it exists, so that's what we have to reconnect with. Kustasara, got anything?
Yeah, I that was my favourite point, I think. I mean, there were some really nice points in there that I've been thinking about, but that I guess it sort of recapping what you said about responsiveness and clarity, or compassion and wisdom, and how it's not like they're two different things, but we do need to that's how we see them, and we need to be working on both of them, and particularly in that practice, if we only reflect on the sort of unreality of things, then we're missing out on. Not only will we sort of dry out our own experience, but we won't actually get anywhere near enlightenment. But if we only dwell in the suffering of others, we're not bringing the aspect that can transcend, the aspect of transcendence, so that they're both completely needed in order for us to be in touch with the transcendental qualities, which is what we're trying to say, is that the suffering of, that's how we're trying to practice as Buddhists, that like the suffering that we experience isn't like, I mean, sometimes we can solve things on their own level, like, if you're in meditation and you've got cramp, then you move your neck, but like it won't be the last time that you suffer. So we're trying to not only have to problem solve as suffering hits us, but like a deeper, more profound realization about the nature of suffering. Yeah. Peter.
Hi, thanks for that. It's a really amazing talk. I was wondering, with the idea of being orientated towards others, helping others, and putting others before ourselves all the time, is there a sort of, I suppose there's this kind of, the idea of balance and neglecting my own needs and and not treating myself as an equal with others as well, because it feels like this teaching is very kind of trying to push the perspective the other way to what we habitually do, but then I just wondered where that kind of comes in to all that sort of taking care of one's self.
Well, yeah, there's quite a lot to say about that. But I mean, the first one was you could just refer to that, like the first stage of the metta bhavana as the way to stay in touch with that, and Jayaka described in the first stage of the Bodhichitta practice, or that. But I think that those teachings, they're not saying you shouldn't do that, but it's more like this is another way of working. So I think I don't know. Yeah, in the spiritual life, we want to have a healthy regard for ourselves, and a lot of us, when we come to the Buddhist Centre, like that's what we're working on. Like we're learning how to be good friends to other people and to ourselves, and like deepening that sense of positivity. That's what you're sort of referring to, and self-care, so that we can do the things that we want to and be around in the way that we want to be. And I think these teachings are sort of at a different, working in a different area, which doesn't preclude that, but it's saying, just like, why don't you, it's a bit like, isn't it a bit tiring, like just trying to perpetuate ourselves, like trying to keep this delusion alive? Isn't it just a bit tiring doing that? Let's just like completely let's just dispense with that. So like we can't only do this practice. I mean, if we could only do this practice, fantastic, but we probably need to work in different ways at different times. But they're sort of in different, it's like a different Dharma night class that we talk about that other one. I don't know. I don't know what you think.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good question. I mean, but we're always included in the practice, and it's probably the best thing that we can actually do for ourselves is orientate ourselves towards others.
Yeah.
But we have to do that in a skillful way. But I think probably, if you immerse yourself in a spiritual community and you've got spiritual friends, we need friends to sort of help us and help us see ourselves. So I think that if we did that, then other people would just say, "Oh, you probably need to do that, a bit more of that, or a bit less of this." Or do you see what I mean? Because it's actually difficult to know what we need to do. Because obviously we can't see ourselves. But of course the practice does include us. But we really have to try and work out, well, what is best for us. I mean, I suggest that sort of being skillful is the best. Being ethical is probably really, really beneficial for us. Do you see what I mean? So you could maybe think about that and start there, because that would have a big effect on our mind. When we're skillful, if we just try to be generous. But sometimes we can have all sorts of neurotic tendencies. So where we do sort of over-egg it with other people, we give ourselves too much, but that's not really what we're saying you should do. Do you see what I mean? So that's why you need other people to sort of go, hold on a minute, that's not what you should be doing. I don't know if any of that helps.
No, it really does, yeah.
Have we got time for one more?
Well, is there one more question?
Is there any online questions?
Are there any online questions?
No, we don't have any.
Okay.
Just a quick question. I have to replay this later because I didn't understand what you're saying about craving and sending out. When you crave something, you want something. Are you kind of sending out wishing that other people get what they want? Is that what you're saying? I don't understand that.
Yeah. So you do. So usually our tendency is that if we experience pleasure, we grasp onto that and we hold on to it. But in this meditation, we're just letting go of that and giving that to other people. So that works on that tendency to grasp after things that we like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Perfect.
Okay, should we finish with a mantra? Do you want to lead something, or shall we?
I can lead the mantra, yeah, I'll do
Yeah. Great.
So if you make yourself nice and comfortable. So we chant the mantra, we'll chant the Shakyamuni mantra, and then we'll let that fade away. And then, if you want, leave at the end. You can make an offering if you want to. Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha. 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 Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha.